what we see as a very disturbing trend in American law enforcement. We're seeing innocent citizens shot and killed on drug raids. We are seeing the wrong house hit on a drug raid. We are seeing high-powered weapons in the hands of untrained and therefore unskilled police officers. We're seeing scared cops who've been made to believe that, that they are going after the enemy, that is the mindset, who are much more likely to engage in impulsive behavior. And that ain't the way it's supposed to be. It's just not. I don't blame the agents. I don't even blame the heads of the agencies. I blame us. Whose laws are we talking about? We're really talking about the people's laws. And if we're not satisfied with the laws that our federal government is enforcing, then we really need to take a look at what our responsibility is. Why have we let this go so long? Over 100 million people have smoked marijuana at least once. We got an admission, I think, from the incumbent president. We had one from the previous president who, although he didn't inhale, admitted to putting it to his mouth and breaking the law. And I think it's just time for us to recognize that we're just being very, very foolish, and we're spending huge sums of money on drug enforcement in general, but on marijuana in particular. LEAP takes the view that prohibition doesn't work, never has, never will, that the drug war has caused more harm than good, that if we really want to deal with the nation's drug quandary or problem, that we will regulate the drug. We will legalize it so that we can regulate it, and then we can control it. We can't do that otherwise. We have spent $1 trillion prosecuting the drug war since Richard Nixon declared war on drugs in 1971. Another $69 billion a year down the rat hole, and what do we have to show for it? Drugs are more readily available today at lower prices and higher levels of potency than in the history of the drug war. So the longest running war in the history of the United States, armed conflict, I dare say, has been an abysmal failure. I characterize it as the most destructive and damning social policy since slavery. After my book came out, I was talking with a police chief who had read the drug chapter, and I said, okay, let me have it, because I know you're going to disagree with me. And he said, I agree with everything you're saying. I said, gosh, can I quote you? And he asked, well, what have you been smoking? And he said, no, you can't quote me. He was a new major city police chief. And I, by the way, talked to an awful lot of police chiefs and other elected officials who whisper their support for the legalization approach, but who are, for a variety of reasons, most of which are obvious, reluctant or fearful to speak out. But I asked this guy, as we were comparing notes over our drug of choice in the bar afterwards, how many people under the influence of marijuana turn violent on you? And I'm not talking about marijuana and any other drug, most particularly beer or wine or distilled spirits. How many have turned violent on you in your career as a cop? None. I've asked that question over and over and over in the last 2 or 3 years on book tour and speaking engagements and so forth. Not one police officer, not one has said, oh, I remember I had this pothead who, swung on me and I had to do this and so on and so forth. Then I'll ask, how about drunks? How about people under the influence of alcohol? And it's laughable. What, 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago? Come on. You work almost any beat in almost any city in this country, you're going to be dealing with belligerent drunks. And some of them become extremely violent, and some of them become extremely dangerous to the safety of a police officer, not to mention the other folks around them or themselves. So one of the things that's very clear is this dichotomy between a drug that does not produce that behavior, demonstrably does not produce that behavior, in fact sort of the opposite behavior, and a drug that does. The drug that does produce more belligerence, more violence, more health problems and financial problems for our country, more family and community problems for our country than all other drugs combined is legal. So there's something wrong with that picture. HempFest